when Nitty calls him to hire him, he's talking and he says, you know, this is my fee, and then whatever I make on the pictures.
Right.
So yeah, that's implied that he'll take pictures of the body after he's killed him,
which is so interesting.
But even when you're introduced to him, I believe he pays off like one of the cops.
Yes.
In the crime scene.
Yes.
So that's just his hobby, you know, as he says. In one of my favorite scenes in the film, when there's that kind of tense diner conversation between the two.
Right.
When Sullivan and Junior stop, and Michael goes in to have a meal, and McGuire, who's on their trail, ends up in the diner with them, and there's that great scene where they're sitting across from each other at separate tables, and they kind of have that conversation, and you know that each one knows, you know, who this person is, and you know that Michael knows, you know, this guy's not right. You know, you can tell by just the look of him and the talking, and when he gets up to use the restroom, he's grabbing the knife.
Right.
You know, I guess he doesn't really need to use the restroom. He's just using it as an excuse to get out. But he knows from this conversation that this guy, the look of him, the way he's coming off, he's not right. So someone to be afraid of. But yeah, when he's talking to him, he says, "Oh, you know, it's something more of a hobby, but also it's what I do for work." But I think you're right. Yeah, I don't think he really is press. Yeah. He's just some guy that likes taking pictures of dead people.
Because he, if you go when he takes on the contract, right? They show him in his house on the phone, and you can see that he has like almost like a trophy wall of all the victims that he's, you know, hung photos of, which is press wouldn't do something like that. You know what I mean? Like that's
not unless you're really fucked in the head.
Yeah.
Well, they would later, as explored in the film, Nightcrawler. But yeah, back then, I don't think they were as successful.
I really liked that they added McGuire, because that character is a great villain, and then them casting Jude Law as this kind of universally like sought after like hunky guy, and making him really creepy and and gross, and you know, he has the long fingernails and the dirty teeth, and he's kind of hunching, you know, he has like bad posture, and just
the bald.
Yeah.
He's like really balding on the top. Yeah, and something I obviously know he's in the movie and everything, but I didn't realize until watching it these last few times and prep for the show, he doesn't show up until halfway through the film.
Yeah. It's a while before he comes on.
Yeah.
And you think about where he's at in his career. He does Gattaca 97, that kind of puts him on the map, and then after Gattaca, he's in a bunch of stuff that doesn't exist, and then he does Talented Mr. Ripley and AI, and it's kind of like, oh, I guess he's our new, and Talented Mr. Ripley is the thing that just catapults him to like on top of everyone's list, like, you know, and he does this, and from there he just, you know, is a movie star basically. I think like this is his last like big supporting role.
I remember seeing, you know, loving AI, and he's great in it, and then seeing this, and then being like, oh man, like Jude Law is awesome. I wish he would make more movies. And then like the next year or two, he's in like 10 movies, and none of them are great.
Right. Well, yeah, that's the thing is like you like, get all this heat, and they start throwing projects on you, and you're like, you know, and you're like, I guess I gotta capitalize on this heat, and it just, you know, some of them don't hit. Like Sky Captain in the World of Tomorrow, which I'm sure he thought, you know, this is going to be my big summer hit, and it just, you know, it wasn't.
What a boring movie that was.
I have not seen it. I kind of want to. It seems like
it's not great. The retro stuff is pretty cool in it, but it's not a good movie.
And you look at where Hanks is at in his career. So this is an interesting thing. I guess this is the time to have the Hanks conversation, because where Hanks is at in his career is really interesting. He's coming off of a string of 10 consecutive $100 million grossers.
Oh, wow.
He's got, so in the 90s, he had 10 pretty much consecutive $100 million grossers. So this guy has had so his 90s run is, it starts with A League of Their Own, which is a great episode on this podcast that you should listen to.
Mm-hmm.
He does A League of Their Own, Sleepless in Seattle, Philadelphia, Forrest Gump, Apollo 13, Toy Story, That Thing You Do, Saving Private Ryan, You've Got Mail, Toy Story 2, The Green Mile, Castaway, and then he produces by Big Fat Greek Wedding, which is a huge hit.
Yeah.
So he's coming off of what is probably the best run of an actor of his generation, I would say. And then he does Road to Perdition, Catch Me If You Can. And they're both in the same year, and they're both two very different performances from what you've seen in him. Because in that 90s run, he's sort of like the all-American guy,
mm-hmm.
you know, the guy that everybody gets behind. He's mild-mannered, and a lot of those performances, he's not showy. And then in Road to Perdition, he's quiet, and in Catch Me If You Can, he's basically the Elmer Fudd to Leonardo DiCaprio's Bugs Bunny. Truly, that's what he's playing.
That's exactly.
That's what he's playing in that movie. Is the Elmer Fudd?
That's a great take on that.
And it's really interesting. And then right after that, he teams up with the Coen brothers and does The Lady Killers. And he does The Terminal with Spielberg, two of his least favorite
mm-hmm.
movies. And then he does the Polar Express, like all three films that just don't work.
Yeah.
But yeah, these two in the same year. It's wild they didn't get an Oscar nomination for either of them.
Let me see if I can figure out who. I can tell you who the supporting actors were in 2002 because Newman is nominated for this film. And
he should have won. I think he's so great.
I agree. I had to talk about something I don't like talking about. I hate him. And that's the Academy Awards.
I think Newman and Walken are both nominated, right?
Newman and Walken both nominated. It's a pretty solid group of guys. I can't knock either of them. Okay, here we go. This year, 2002, Best Supporting Actor is Chris Cooper in Adaptation.
Okay, yeah, that's a good year. Okay,
he's the winner. He's fantastic in the movie. I love Adaptation.
Okay, I can't.
Ed Harris in The Hours, who's unfortunately the best thing in The Hours, in my opinion.
I haven't seen The Hours, but that's the take that I hear from you.
Yeah, and I know that's like a big film with a lot of big name women in it, and Ed Harris is probably the best role in the film.
That's tragic.
Paul Newman for this, John C. Reilly for Chicago, which that's the wrong John C. Reilly movie to nominate him for. He should have been nominated for Magnolia. Christopher Walken for Catch Me If You Can. So that's a solid group of guys.
That's a good list. Okay, I can't really knock that list. That's probably the best supporting actor I've seen in a while.
Yeah, they're all great. I would have loved if Newman had won, since this was his last on-screen role before his death. Because I think he does Cars, but that's just his voice.
Yes.
Before he dies.
To go out on.
I'm sure that's what he was hoping.
Yeah. It's a great. It's two great roles for Hanks. And then, of course, Daniel Craig, who it's hard to, like, when you hear him complain about the Bond movies, you go, all right, man, like, you're getting paid millions and millions of dollars to be in, like, one of the marquee franchises. But then you see him in something like Logan Lucky or Knives Out, and you kind of get why he's mad. Because they don't require a lot from him.
No, and in both of those movies that you mentioned, he's having the time of his life.
He's having the time of his life. And even in this movie, he's loving every second he gets to share screens with Tom Hanks and Paul Newman. He's just enjoying it. And I get why he's like, I really don't want to make another Bond movie. I'm like, I agree. You should make another Bond. Because he's one of those actors who, I mean, I think he should have been, I would have had him as best, nominated for Best Supporting in 2019. I forgot who won that year. I think, who did win that year? I don't know who won. Oh, that was Brad Pitt, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a Brad Pitt. I would have nominated him for Knives Out and Best Supporting because he's so good. He's so good in this, too. He's really good at playing a smarmy, entitled villain.
Yeah.
And he doesn't do a whole lot. That's the great part about it, is that this role...
Yeah, he's off screen for the majority of the film.
But he looms so large. And whenever he comes up on screen, you're just like, I just really don't like him. Like, you're just an asshole.
Especially when he's in hiding and he goes down and he tries to tell Nitty like what to do.
And all you need is just a touch of the Tooch. And that's all you need in your movie. Just a touch of the Stanley Tucci to just tell Daniel Craig off. It's that great line.
It's very much like, says, do you know who my father is? Energy.
Right, exactly. And there's that great line where Tucci goes, "You're a big baby who doesn't know his thumb from his dick." I think is the line.
Yeah, exactly. That's the line.
That's such a great line. And Stanley Tucci's also good. He's in this for maybe 3 scenes, and he's great in all 3 scenes. There's that other great scene where it's him and Newman talking
about what to do. Yeah.
Yes, and Newman's like, "Kill Sullivan, not the kid." And Tucci, he's got another great line. It's like, boy becomes a man, and do you think that he won't remember?
Yeah.
And the weight on Newman's face is like, no, I said, don't kill the kid. But, that's something that, Newman has to deal with.
Yeah. And I should point out that when Nitty calls McGuire, it's heavily implied that McGuire should kill the kid.
Yes.
Anyways, because Nitty makes that call, we don't want this coming back on us later on down the line.
Right.
So it's implied that kill the kid as well.
Which is so, yeah.
I didn't mean to step on where you were headed. I just wanted to point that out. That Newman tells him don't kill the kid, but then in the phone call to McGuire, you can tell that he's telling him, nip this in the bud too.
All right. So, I'm doing a bit of research about the film, and Mendes said that he was inspired by Akira Kurosawa films and that their lack of dialogue, and that's something that I really responded to. Because another film that I was thinking of while we were discussing this, and I misspoke when I said that they wouldn't make this film today, because they did, and it was John Wick. It's a pretty similar story, broadly. A old boss has to protect his son from a hitman that was once in his employ.
Mm-hmm.
That movie is it's very showy. Its cinematography is very showy. That movie is what you described the graphic novel as. Very actiony, very John Woo inspired, 2 guns, all that stuff. And I prefer this because this is the more mature of that movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
This is the more mature